So during this first phase of our business's growth, one of the things that kind of hit me was that I wasn't a good manager. In fact, I'm probably one of the world's worst because I'm just not naturally very organized. I'm not a naturally organized, structured person. I like to be free and creative and have all my time free and have a lot of flexibility. So what I did is I started asking team members who came to work with me to send me daily updates. And I started saying, maybe I need to find people who can manage themselves. There's a great saying that I heard, I don't remember where it came from, but it's hire people that need to be led, not people that need to be managed. And the implication is to hire people that can manage themselves. Even if you find a person that's a super creative type that's all over the map and not very organized, they can still get an update out to you every day at the end of the day. And it's very simple. You just say, hey, will you do me a favor? At the end of every day, take 5 minutes. If you're taking more than 10 minutes to do this, you're doing something wrong. So take 5 minutes, send me a daily update. And in the daily update, I want you to put 3 things. Number 1, what you did that day and the results that you got. Somebody just said that's 2. Hopefully, it should be 1. 2 ways of describing the same thing. Number 2, problems or challenges. And number 3, questions that you have for me. What you do, results you got, problems and challenges, questions. And just read those every day. Just read them every day. Put your finger on the pulse. And there's something that happens inside of humans when you see a consistent reporting of real-time information. You start to become attuned to that other process. And very important, very important. You can learn who someone is very quickly. The next thing that was very important, and I actually started this from the beginning, I had learned earlier from studying some other systems, is to track all the important numbers in your business on a visual chart every day. Chart all the numbers on a chart every day. I'll give you some a little bit later in the program to chart, but chart at least 5 numbers every day. And these can be things like incoming leads, your conversion rates, average sale price, total sales, deposits, expenses, that kind of stuff. These days you can log into a computer terminal and see just about any of it, no matter what kind of business you have. And if you can't, you should probably automate that thing so you can. The visual display of quantitative information is one of the true miracles of business. And then the last thing is daily meetings to keep important projects on track. We did this in the early days. We stopped doing it for a couple of years, and actually for Altitude, we picked it back up for a while. Originally, we called this our noon call, and this was, back in the business when I'm estimating now when we had between 6 and 15 people, or I don't remember how many people were on the team. Every day at noon, we got on the phone and quickly go over what we're up to, what we're trying to do. And for me, this project was very intense, and we did daily calls for a while. Every day, we just get on the phone, quick, where's everyone at? Connect, what are we all trying to do? Boom, we're off. So daily meetings on important projects, fast. We're not getting together to have a committee meeting and try to have a group decision on every process and everything we're trying to do. We're getting together to coordinate. Coordinate. What does coordinate mean? I think Nietzsche said, life is a process of constantly reorienting oneself in a world of total uncertainty. Life is a process of constantly reorienting oneself in a world of total uncertainty. So when you coordinate, you figure out what the other person's location is, where they're at in relationship to yours, and you become more efficient. And when you're working with stars, someone says, okay, I made progress on this, and you say, okay, so I can see you're going to be done with that in probably 2 or 3 days, so I'm going to have to do this. Broadband communication. The more communication, the better inside your business. So those daily meetings to just go over what's happening. And lately, in our meetings, this is something that came from Rob Kelly that he recommended, and we've been doing it now for a while, is each person, when they share what they have to share, they then say, here are my top 3 priorities right now. Boom, here are my top 3 priorities. And when everyone says that, at the end of, I mean, you can just have a 5-minute meeting and say, what are your top 3 priorities? You just know where everyone's at. It really is interesting. What are your top 3 priorities? Very powerful. It's now integrated into just about everything we do. So we've already got someone who is in the running for Mr. Speed of Implementation Altitude 07. Took the, well, I'll let him tell you the story. Where you at? Right here? He came over to me like around lunch and he said, man, I went and took this idea and implemented it. And I said, all right, well, what's going on? And he came over to me right before the break and gave me, or right after the break, and gave me a little update. Just talk a little bit about it.
I'm Jason Moffitt, live down the road, San Diego. And he was talking about the quick speed of implementation. And I'm the kind of guy who has a lot of ideas, way too many ideas, and I don't get a lot of them done. So I kind of felt bad, like I was maybe taking myself a little bit away from the content, but I really quick just made a blog. I'm in the poker market, and the biggest frustration people have in that market, it's mostly men with huge egos, have a huge problem admitting that they're losing. Everybody's breaking even. And they all blame the guy sucking out on the river, which is basically someone who's in an inferior position, maybe was a 1 to 20 dog, should have never been the hand, and he wins. So people only remember that instance. It's like, oh, he sucked out on me, and they're hitting stuff, and I've done it too, but they don't remember everything else. So this is the problem, is suck out. So I registered a domain, suckoutsteve.com. And I just made a quick blog really quick, forward from GoDaddy straight over to SuckoutSteve. Did a quick post about, I feel your pain. It's not your fault. This stuff happens all the time. I used to hate poker. I almost quit until I learned this one crucial skill of how to punish these guys who were sucking out on me. And so I just sent out an email, right then when I did it. And in hindsight, too, Suck Out Steve is not that great because in the spam filter in Aweber, they think you're sending porn. Huh. But it's just good that I did something. I mean, it's better than not doing anything. So, I don't know if Suck Out Steve is going to be my avatar or not, but I sent it out. About maybe, I think 175 people had opened the email so far, and there was 7 sales for like $212 so far. So first sale came in at 4 o'clock today.
There's some speed of implementation for you. That's what I'm talking about. Suck out Steve, huh? That's the first thing that came to mind. If you can't describe what you are doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing. W. Edwards Deming. If you can't describe what you're doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you are doing. Most people who are successful don't even know why, in my opinion. They don't know why. They've got a great story that they tell themselves and other people. They don't really know. Most people that are great at doing things are horrible at teaching the thing that they do. Why? Because they don't know what they're doing. They're just good at it. It's just naturally, they're good at it. These types tend to like to write books, too, which can be a problem. W. Edwards Deming was very, very influential on my thinking, someone who was referred to me by my mentor, Jerry, who I mentioned earlier. And for a couple of years, I was very into his stuff. And Deming had an interesting story. Deming was a statistician who studied under a guy that worked for Bell Labs, who brought statistics to business. And he really took to this idea of applying statistical methods, particularly to manufacturing. And what he did is he went in and he said, well, instead of just accepting what comes out, is there a way to use math and statistics and some of these kind of higher level things that we're figuring out to make manufacturing better, to make it more profitable, to make companies work better. And as he developed over the years and over the decades, he started to realize that a lot of this was about people and the way you treated people. And America, right after the World War II, late 40s and early 50s, America was riding high. I mean, we had just destroyed the rest of the world, essentially, and everyone needed to buy all of our exports, and you could make anything and make a lot of money, so we didn't need a lot of advice in manufacturing. So he went over to Japan. They were very open to his ideas because their country was destroyed, and they're trying to rebuild. And the companies invited him in and used his statistical methods. And, I'm stylizing and paraphrasing the whole story, but they used his statistical methods. And a lot of people think that he was largely responsible for them rebuilding their country. Deming. Well, after doing that for a couple of decades over there, America, which was starting to slow down a little bit, and especially car manufacturing companies, said, hey, maybe you could come over here and do some of that stuff over here. And he went to work with Ford when Donald Peterson was running the show over there and helped them launch some amazing successes. He was around when they launched the Ford Escort, which became the best-selling car in the country, and the Taurus, and other big hits. And he worked with other car companies and did very well, and then went to work with other big American companies and became very famous, did a lot of seminars. And Deming had some revolutionary ideas. But instead of them just being based on hearsay and what he thought might work, they were really based on kind of a more scientific method. Try the thing out, apply it, see the results that you're getting. If they work, keep them, develop them. And if they don't, throw them out. And he liked to measure the results of what he was doing. He liked to measure the process. And if you ever see a cover of Deming on the cover of one of his books, he's got this huge dome piece. I mean, he must have been the smartest person that's ever lived. I mean, it's like the cranium came out like an extra inch over here. And if you ever hear him talk, he was just amazing. So let's talk a little bit about thinking in systems. Thinking in systems. And I bring up thinking in systems because I've realized that if you're going to grow a large, successful company, at some point, it's going to cross a threshold where you can no longer keep all of the processes in your head. You can't keep track of everything that's going on, and you need to do something to roll those up into higher order processes that you can then interpret, and you can go from having something that looks like the cockpit of a 747 to a steering wheel and a gear shift again, so that you can drive the thing again instead of trying to figure out how this whole thing operates. And in order to do that, systems thinking can be very useful. So let's talk about what systems thinking is. In my view, systems thinking is looking at a group of interacting parts, entities, this stuff that's all interacting together, and instead of looking at the individual pieces, looking at what emerges when they interact, looking at the whole system, what's produced by the whole system. Rob Kelly, one time we were having a conversation, and he said, a lot of business people, they get stuck in the minutia, in the details of a process, and they get too caught up in, well, maybe we should tweak this thing, or maybe we should do this one little thing, maybe we should do this other little thing, maybe if we tweak this, it'll whatever. And he said, they don't zoom out and just say, okay, if you pour some money in the top, what comes out the bottom? If you pour $100 in the top, how much comes out of the end of the system? And look at it that way to start. It's actually a very important and brilliant observation. Most people don't look at the whole system. So when you're thinking about systems, there are some important pieces. And I want to share a few of those with you and hopefully teach you about them in a way that isn't too confusing, because sometimes this stuff can come across as complex. The first element, and the one that I've found to be maybe the most interesting in systems thinking, is physical variation. Physical variation. And physical variation is a phenomenon that happens whenever you run something out here in reality where we live. there are all these forces like gravity and air and people getting in fights and snowstorms and whatever else that affect things. Things don't always go the way that we want them to go. There's variation in any process. And you can even take something like a machine that stamps out a certain amount of a part on a metal press, and bam, it just stamps those things out. And you can chart every day, if you run the thing for 8 hours, how many of the part it stamps out, and every day there will be a different amount. And if you chart it on a chart and it's a very stable system, it'll still have variation. And sometimes it'll go way down. Why? The machine broke that day. And they had to call from out of town and get the part. And one day it's way up. What happened? Oh, well, there was a heat wave and the air conditioner went off, and it turns out that that particular type of machine is much more productive when it's hotter, but it also burns the machine out faster. And you don't know all this stuff if you're not charting. And what Deming would do is these experiments. He had one called the red beads that was fascinating, where he had this bowl full of beads, and some of them were white and some of them were red, and he had this paddle with these indented things, and you'd dip the paddle in there and you'd pull it out, and there were an equal amount of red and white beads in there. And let's say that there were 10 indented spaces on the paddle, and he'd have the person count them up, and he'd treat them as if they were producing work that day. And so, at one point, they'd, come out with 7 red beads and 3 white ones, and he'd say, "You've been bad today. You produced bad results. Too many red beads. So we're going to give you a demotion. We're going to punish you and lower your pay because you produced 7 red beads." And they'd dip it in again, and they'd pull it out. And this time, there'd be, 4 red beads and 6 white ones. And he'd say, "Oh, good, your performance is much better. We'll give you a raise today." Something like 95% of the results that your business or any system is producing are because of the system, not because of the people. It's because of the system. And when there's variation, it's because of the system that you created in one way or another, not because of the people. So physical variation exists, and it's important to track your key metrics on a visual graph so you can see that, and then you can use a cool trick called running a moving average through it. And in Excel, this is super hard, because what you do is you right-click on the chart, and then you say, "Add moving average." And if you really can't figure out how to do that, you go into the help menu, and it'll take maybe like 4 minutes to do it instead of the 1 minute that it would take by right-clicking on it. And when you run a 7-day or 15-day or 30-day moving average through your numbers, you can go, look at that. It is a stable process. It's not as wild and crazy as it looks. So you have to smooth physical variation because it always happens in any real-world system. Another interesting aspect of systems is that short-term and long-term results are often very different. Short-term and long-term results are often very, very different. I'll get into some specifics on these in just a little bit. There's one in terms of motivation I want to tell you about that might change your perspective on how to motivate people a little bit later. Here's another one that I like. In a system, you never do just one thing. So a lot of times what we try to do in our business system is something's screwed up over here, and we want to tweak that thing so that we fix it. And as soon as we fix it, we go, okay, everything's good. And we don't say, now everyone watch for other effects that are going to come because I'm going to change part of the system. And you do a tweak over here, and it fixes your website and it runs smoother, but all of a sudden your refunds go up by 20%, and you never connect the two because you weren't looking for it. And you don't realize that all of these things are connected. And when you start thinking in short and long-term results, you also start looking further upstream for things. So in systems, you never do just one thing. All systemic changes have side effects. Any change that you make to the system will have some side effect somewhere that you didn't anticipate. And so one of the things that I like to do is whenever I'm going to change anything is try to let as many people know as possible and say, I'm going to change something over here. I'm going to change what our marketing says. Over in customer service, tell me what the customers are saying, because we're going to change the marketing. Over in sales, how are the numbers looking once we change this thing? Everyone's got to be on the same page. Why? Because if you have a disconnect and you miss the side effect, it can hurt you. It can damage you. Another interesting part about systems is that, and I learned this from Deming, once a system becomes stable, it becomes very difficult to change. And this is especially important with people, because people are systems. We are very complex systems. So as an example, if you're a golfer and you start playing golf and you track your golf games statistically, and you start out and you're shooting, in the hundreds and change, and you start getting better and better and better, if you ever reach a point where you flatten out and you become stable for a long time, it's going to be incredibly difficult for you to get back on the growth path. You got to keep going. You got to keep that system changing, because once it becomes stable, it's very hard to change. So once someone has gotten stuck, or once someone has gotten trained wrong in your business, very hard to change. Another thing that my mentor Jerry taught me, he said, character is a stable system. A person's character is a stable system, meaning very hard to change. I remember hearing Jack Welch tell a story about how he was out playing golf with someone that was a high-level manager at GE. And he saw the guy cheat. He saw him do something like, walk over and drop the ball on the green or something, and he was kind of like that. He just cheated. And he said, I went back, I think he went back on Monday morning and fired the guy. And he said, if he's going to do it there, he's definitely going to do it over here. Character is a stable system. You've probably heard, I think Gandhi said, I don't remember the quote, but what he basically said is, my life is my message. Everything that I do is integrated. They're all the same thing. And you'll find that's the same about people. If you get someone that's taking shortcuts and living on the edge, that's what they're going to do. And you got to just deal with that. If you find someone that's super conservative and pessimistic, that's probably just what they're going to do. It's how they're wired. If there's anything to hear of what I just said, it's don't let variation freak you out. Chart it visually. If you have an up sales day, do not go, yeah, great. Because it's very likely that you're going to have a down one tomorrow, and then you're going to be like, Don't let your emotions be whipsawed. Smooth, chart daily. And the other thing is, expect side effects, and expect the long-term results to be different from the short-term results. Expect that. When you have a big win, grab your team and say, all right, everyone, we just had a big win. This is the time when we need to be most careful, because this is when we're all going to be cocky, when we're all going to be too sure of ourselves, we're all going to just miss any signs of danger that are coming. Think Titanic here. I was talking to my girlfriend the other day, and she was saying that a friend of hers knows a woman who's 1,000,000 years old, was 97 years old or 100 years old or something like that. She had I think she actually died a few years ago, but anyway, she had a ticket for the Titanic, and she saw a newspaper article that said, the ship that even God couldn't sink. And as soon as she saw it, she went and sold her ticket and lived to tell about it, right? So watch out for those kind of things, because there are always side effects, and there are always unexpected results. I brought this back around to the two mistakes that we make unconsciously, actually to protect ourselves automatically: emotional estimation and seeing only validation. And one of the ones that I see people do all the time is plan how they're going to tweak a system and then plan how it's going to perform after they tweak it. They've got it all figured out. Well, I'm going to go and change my website, and then all of a sudden this is going to work better. Or I'm going to make this change to my product, and 50% more people are going to buy. With logic, they're planning how the system is going to respond. You do not want to do that. You want to hook the whole system up, run it, see how it responds, and then say, now I think I understand how this is going to respond. Right? So test, model, project. And then the other one, seeing only validation. We humans are a funny group. Whenever something goes well, we love to say, yeah. And whenever something doesn't work out, we go, man, you really screwed that up, didn't you? That's just what we do, naturally. We always want to associate ourselves with success and dissociate ourselves with anything that's not successful. And if you're interpreting all of the positive changes that you have in your business as being skill, yeah, it was my skill that did it, and all the negative things that happen as being bad luck, you're probably missing out on reality, probably missing the boat. So get a little more real with your bad self. Deming also talked about these two important pillars of a business. This is kind of moving up to the next level. And these are paradoxical, all right? So he talked about a concept that he called constancy of purpose, and then he talked about another concept that he called never-ending improvement. So one thing is constant, and one thing is changing. And they're like the two ends of, you know, a Parthenon that hold up the superstructure or something. Constancy of purpose is figuring out those elements that are your core, the strategic elements, so to speak. And never-ending improvement is figuring out how to do that stuff faster, more efficiently, better, more streamlined, more profitably. And if you don't have both, you're going to change all the stuff that you shouldn't be changing, or you're going to be doing things the way you've always done them with everything. So it's key to identify what are the things that we never want to change. And then it's key to identify what are the things that we are going to constantly improve on a never-ending basis. Southwest Airlines, they're probably going to always stick with low-cost airfare. Right? Low cost, that's it. They've standardized their fleet of planes, their strategy is cemented. But they're probably always going to improve the experience that the customer has while they're getting that low-cost airfare. Does that make sense? You can have one part of the strategy that doesn't change, and yet you can have never-ending improvement. And you need to be clear on what both are. And if you don't know what they are, and you don't talk about them, guess what? Your stars are going to grab stuff and move it around. They're going to change things you didn't want changed. They're going to keep things the same you didn't want to keep the same. So you got to know what those are internally as a business. Humans, as I mentioned, are also systems. We are very complex systems, and we do not respond logically. I don't know if anyone's noticed that. Have you ever had the conversation in your head that you're going to have with another person? You get it all figured out. You got it all wired. Okay, here's what I'm going to say. Here's what they're going to do. And then you get there, and the person doesn't behave the way that the machine in your mind behaved. It never works out that way. So don't do that. Stop planning how other people are going to respond to what you say logically. They're complex systems. A couple of tips for creating systems. Number one, hook the whole thing up and run it. You got to hook up all the pieces and run it. Turn it on in some way and see how it performs. Measure the performance. Then make guesses about what it's going to do in the future. Next, track results over time visually. We already covered that. Don't delude yourself by just reading the high points. Put the numbers up. Show them to your team. Be open and honest with everyone about what's going on. Proactively look for unintended consequences. Expect them. Whenever you fire something new up, Start asking questions like, all right, everyone, what's happening that we weren't expecting? What are some of the things that came up? One of the things that I do inside of our team is I talk a lot about the idea of how anyone that finds a problem is a winner. If you find a problem in our system and you raise your hand and you say, I found a problem over here, you're a winner. We won't kill the messenger. In fact, we say, this person found a problem and it saved us a lot of money. It really helped us out. Because every business has problems. But what do people do? Well, they don't want to be punished. So what happens when you're working in a regular business that's not one of the types of businesses that we run in here, regular company, political, a lot of games, incentivized behavior, a lot of drama, and you make a mistake? What do? What's the first thing you do? Hide it. Right. What's the second thing you do? Try to fix it. Good. So you hide it, and then you try to fix it. Now, if something goes wrong, if you screw something up, are you probably the right one to fix it? And I don't know, but I don't think it takes a NASA rocket scientist to figure out that the person that isn't able to do it right maybe should give that to somebody else. So if they've isolated and run off in their cave and now they're working on the thing, what are they probably doing? Making it worse. Deming said, drive out fear. Drive out fear. So you have to drive out fear. You have to get rid of that fear that you're going to be punished if something goes wrong. And you have to be light about it. You know, when someone screws up something big, you got to suck it up and laugh and say, you know what, we all have bad days, it's okay, and go cry in the corner. Cry to yourself later. When you want to change a result, go to work on the system, not the symptom. Work on systems, not symptoms. And then the two biggies. Focus on what's working. Focus on the strength. Focus on what you're getting that's positive and develop and grow that. Don't focus on your weakness. If you're trying to do one thing and all of a sudden this other thing takes off and is successful, follow the success. And next, look for bottlenecks or constraints. Those can be the key that unlocks a magic door to a lot of growth. Every system has a place where it gets squeezed down and there's a little constraint. Look for those. Seek them out.